So what exactly is ethical hacking then? We have discussed the types of hackers. We have identified a malicious hacker as a black hat hacker with the intent of doing harm to an organization's network for personal gain. We have discussed what the ethical hacker is. So an ethical hacker would be doing the same activity but in an authorized manner. So they would have legal contracts that they would be signing with the organization, which would give them a definite scope of what they are allowed to do and what they are not allowed to do. And the ethical hackers would function within those scopes, would try to execute those test scenarios where they would be able to identify those flaws or those system vulnerabilities, and then they would be submitting a report to the management of what they have found. They would also help the management to mitigate or to resolve those weaknesses so that nobody else can misuse them later on. They might use the same techniques and the same tools that black hat hackers do. However, the main difference here is that these guys are authorized to do that particular activity. They're doing it in a controlled manner with the intent of helping the organization and not with the intent of personal gains. So who's an ethical hacker? Again, an ethical hacker is a highly intelligent, highly educated person who knows how computers function, how programming languages work, how operating systems work. They can troubleshoot. They're technically very adept at computing. They understand the architecture. They understand how various components in a computer work. They can troubleshoot those components, and they can basically be very good with programming as well. Now, when I say programming, we don't want an ethical hacker to be a good developer of applications. We want them to understand programming in such a way that they can create scripts, they can write their own short programs like viruses, worms, trojans, or exploits which would help them achieve the objective that they have set out for. So, here you can see the ethical hacker. They are individuals who perform a security assessment of their companies with the permission of concerned authorities. So what is a security assessment? A security assessment is finding out the exact security posture of the organization by identifying what security controls are in place, how they've been configured, and if there are any gaps in the configurations themselves. So an organization will hire an ethical hacker. They would give the ethical hacker the information about what information is or what security controls, what firewalls, what IDSS, IPSS, intrusion detection or intrusion prevention systems, antiviruses are already in place, and then they will ask the ethical hacker to figure out a way to bypass these mechanisms and see if they can still hack the organization. What is the need of an ethical hacker? The need of an ethical hacker is proactive security. The ethical hacker would identify all the existing flaws in an organization and try to resolve those flaws to help secure the organization from black hat hackers. So ethical hackers would prevent hackers from cracking into an organization's network by securing the organization, by improving on their security on a periodic basis. And they would also try to identify system vulnerabilities, network vulnerabilities, or application level vulnerabilities that would have been missed or have already been missed, and then try to figure out a way of plugging them or resolving them so that they cannot be misused by other hackers. They would also analyze and enhance an organization's security policies. Now, what are policies? Policies are basically documents that have been created by an organization of rules that all the employees need to follow to ensure that the security of an organization is maintained. For example, a password policy. A password policy would help users in an organization to adhere to the standards the organization has identified for a password complexity. For example, a password, when a user is creating them, should adhere to standards where they are using random words. They contain the alphabet A through Z, uppercase and lowercase, 0 through 9 as numerics, and special characters, and they are randomized so that the password becomes more stronger to prevent from brute force attacks. So what would an ethical hacker do at this point in time? They would try to test the strength of the passwords to see if brute force attacks or dictionary attacks are possible, and if any of these passwords can be cracked. They would ensure that all the employees are following the policies and all the passwords are as secured as the policies want them to be. If there are any gaps in the policies or the implementation of the policy, it is the ethical hacker's responsibility to identify those gaps and warn the organization about it. Similarly, they would also try to protect any personal information, any data that is owned by the organization that is critical for the functioning of the organization, and they would try to protect it from falling into the hacker's hands.